Hi, everyone. My name is Dennis Corsi. I'm the artistic director of the Fresh Fruit Festival, which is a queer arts festival in New York City. This is our interview series called Up and Coming. This is episode 3. This series is to help up and coming theater artists find their way into the business side of building a career. This episode is about designers. So we have 5 fantastic designers here who I'm excited for you to meet. Before we learn a bit more about them, I want to mention that you can find more information about the Fresh Fruit Festival on our website, which is freshfruitfestival.com. And we're also a nonprofit and run on donations. So if you like this content and want more, or if you just want to support queer artists, please consider dropping by the website to make a donation. All right, so let's meet our panelists. So we're going to start with each of our 5 designers here to, for a couple of minutes, tell us about who they are, what they do, and a bit about their journey so far. So let's start with Zach.
I was afraid you were going to say that. I was going to say, what do we go in billing order? Okay. Hi, I'm Zach Blane. I am a lighting designer. It's tricky to ask the funny question of sort of like, where have you been to where are you now? Because where are we now? You know, it's a funny question. And to think about where I've been is like a deep dive. I think, so I would say, that's such a funny question. It's funny to think about that right now, actually.
Well, why don't you just tell us what are the pre-pandemic, what are the most recent things that you've been doing?
Sure. I do a lot of things. As a lighting designer, I really approach in a way that is like dramaturgical in nature, storytelling in nature, sort of painterly in nature. So I tend to be very lucky to not get asked to do a similar type genre thing over and over and over. I tend to sort of, I'm able to dip and dive into different mediums. I lit cruise ships for 10 years. I do corporate work. I do really, really intimate plays. I do sort of like large scale musicals and like glitz and glammy, like Vegas-y things. Because I'm really just approaching all of these pieces in a dramaturgical way. So I think that's sort of my way in. So yeah, I've been doing that.
Interject.
Yeah, please help. Phone a friend. Wilson and I share a birthday.
Oh yeah, we do share a birthday. Last night I saw his work on PBS, Wicked in Concert, which was gorgeous and so much fun.
Thank you. Yeah, so what I was doing before is a lot of live things. What I'm doing now, I guess I'm dipping my toe into the TV film space. I did just do Wicked in Concert that aired on PBS last night, which was insane and very interesting. And I think we'll have to have a coffee and talk about that, not while we're being filmed. But I think, yeah, it was really exciting. And it was an very interesting and very uplifting thing to be a part of in this time. Because I was the lighting designer. Actually, interestingly, I was the lighting designer and I also was the production supervisor of the entire project. So I oversaw everything. I created the shot list. I dealt with all the labor, everything I did. So that was very interesting in the time of COVID to keep morale high, keep safety centered, and still get like art, right? Anyway, I'm talking a lot. I said not many things, so I will yield the floor.
That's a good sampling, and I'll be interested to hear a little bit more about your TV and film work, and if anyone else here has been involved in that, because that's another good outlet, I think, for people to consider. Ryu, tell us about you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Ryu Rakkulchon. I am a set and costume designer from Bangkok, Thailand. Recently just celebrated my 10th year here in the States. Apart from being a set and costume designer, I'm also an educator. I'm currently teaching at Brooklyn College. I am also a board member of Withall, which is a nonprofit on a mission to prevent eating disorders and support recovery by providing simple and accessible tools to help people act. Check us out at withall.org. So right now, I just actually, thankfully, got my first associate credit with someone who I've worked for over 6 years now, a very talented designer who just opened Passover on Broadway, Mr. Wilson Chin.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So why don't we pop over to Wilson?
Hi, everybody. I'm Wilson. I'm a set designer, he, him. I'm a set designer, so I design scenery. I do a lot of regional theater around the country, some off-Broadway, a little bit of Broadway. I've done a little bit of film and television, which I really enjoy and I'd love to do more of. And yeah, that's all I have to say. You know what? I'm also part of the union. I'm a board member as part of Local 829, which is the union that represents all of us.
Thank you. Twee?
Hi, I'm Twee. I'm a sound designer. I'm originally from Baltimore, went to Howard University in their technical theater program. Did not graduate, but went anyways, and love to shout out Howard. Recent graduate of Yale School of Drama's one-year sound certificate program. A little bit of regional credits. My first regional credit was Kansas City Rep in 2019, my first show before COVID. Done a lot of radio plays, podcasts, television, such as Marvel, Stars, HBO. I'm currently doing something at Atlantic Theater Company Off-Broadway, and my next show, I'm doing a musical and my first Broadway play, Chicken and Biscuits at Circle in the Square. And I think that's about it for right now.
Congrats on your upcoming Broadway debut. That's exciting. And Shirlee?
Hi guys, I'm Shirlee Idzakovich, and I'm a costume designer, and I work between Los Angeles and New York City. I'm also a stylist. I worked all day today on a Zara styling shoot for their next lookbook, whatever they call it. And I have a lot of styling clientele that I work with on the red carpet, but I've costumed many off-Broadway shows, many regional. And Zach, I'm dear friends with Byork Lee, and I pulled, yep, I was with her before she left to go do the Wicked thing, because we were shooting her one shoe for LaDuca. We were shooting a campaign for that.
It's so awesome. I just want to say, first of all, I'm obsessed with Byork, and second of all, I will say a little like Easter egg, which is, I don't want to talk about Wicked the whole time, but a Wicked Easter egg is Stephanie Shu, who sings I'm Not That Girl in the concert. She is wearing Byork's one shoe.
One shoe? I know.
Yeah, the shoes. And it was a very, very, very nice moment for the two of them. And anyway, I love Byork. We text every morning. I'm obsessed with her.
I know. She's just a doll. But no, I love costuming. My degree is actually in pattern making, because I'm like probably older than all of you put together here. And I got a degree in something back in 1982 that I thought was going to be helpful, making patterns, because there was a lot of industry in America, but it all changed, and I switched over to costuming, and I've never looked back. So, but my first love was fashion. So this is just, I kept thinking, oh, this is just a nice breeze way to get through back to where I'm going to be. And I stayed here forever. So, but so happy that you invited me. Thanks.
Great. We have some really great people here. I'm excited to get into conversation with y'all. The first question is, when talking to a lot of emerging artists of any discipline, there's this feeling of, what do I do to move forward? These young artists are really willing to put in the work, and they're really eager, but they're not quite sure where to direct their energies to find that level up in career. So I'd love to hear from all of you, what sorts of things did you put your energy into early in your career that had a big payoff? Whether it was one specific opportunity you took, or just a certain mindset, or anything like that. Does anyone have thoughts they'd like to start with?
Sure, I'll start. I think my biggest obstacle was breaking into the network, because there's so many people. Everyone thinks that Broadway is huge, and it is big, but when you get here, there's like, oh, there's this group here, this group there, that group there, and it is really hard to break into those groups. And sometimes getting into that group, and I hear a lot of young costumers, because I teach costuming all over the world through the National Thespian Association. And I hear a lot of them like, well, they wanted me to come on for free. And I'm like, oh, okay, we got to go back to square one here. That is not good. That is not good. I mean, and just for them to understand that their time is valuable, even if they're standing there just holding the pin cushion, your time is valuable. And I think a lot of them jump in and they'll do anything to get in that space, and teaching them that, you know, you're worth something, and don't, I'm not going to say not do it for free, because I've done many stuff for free, many things for free. And not one of them got me where I wanted to be. But it's that paying thing, even if it's a little pay, take it and move on, and building that small pay network and moving up that ladder. I think that was the hardest part, because you think you're just going to come here and just jump into the business. Oh no, that barely happens. That doesn't happen a lot. I don't know about the rest of you, but go ahead, jump in.
So I think the fear that a lot of people might have is that if they turn down those unpaid opportunities, that they're going to be left behind.
You will not be left behind. There's 50 other unpaid opportunities that next day, I feel, in my business at least. And I'm just like, ugh, that it's one thing to give your talent for free for an organization or for a concept or to get billing on it. It's a whole nother thing to work 3 weeks on something for free.
I highly recommend the career path, my trajectory. I started as an assistant for many years, and that's what I recommend for people. It's a great way to learn how a show gets put up, how you meet lots of people, you understand the rules of everyone, you understand what it takes to put up a show, and all the while you're getting paid for it. It's a job. And you know, like, yes, there's always grad school and stuff like that, but you know, that's an education that you're paying for. And you know, when you're assisting, you're in it, you're like, it's hands-on experience, and you're getting paid for it.
Wilson, how did you get your first assistant gigs?
I like, you know, like all of us, I emailed like 20 of my favorite designers, and a lot of them, you know, had me on for like a week or so, where you kind of get to know each other, and then eventually you kind of like find someone who you kind of like work well with, and you kind of end up being with them for a while. So you know, it's a great way to like figure out how someone whose work you admire, perhaps, how they put together a show, like how they think about a script, how they think about putting together the visuals, you know, like the model and the drafting and going to the scene shops. What you learn is that every designer is very different, and there's no one way to put together a show, but there is the way that you put together a show. So I think by assisting a lot of different people and all the while designing like small projects of your own, you kind of like develop a skill set for how you design a show.
Yeah, I would say for me, separate of even sort of like working or intern, like money wise, I would say starting out for me, I did a lot of research. I graduated, did not go to grad school. I just graduated from undergrad for lighting. And I moved to New York, and I was like, cool, I have rent to pay, et cetera. How do I do this? So I knew what I could do in my control was the research and the work. So I essentially researched. At that time, I was like, similar to Wilson was saying, like, I was interested in being an assistant. I was interested in learning and getting into these rooms and sort of moving in that way. So what I ended up doing is I researched every lighting designer that I had respect for or that I heard of in the country. And I somehow, you know, found their email addresses, wow, addresses. And I wrote to them and I started a conversation. I said, listen, can I pick your brain? Can we meet for a coffee? And I ended up meeting with a ton of designers, and maybe that, let's say I met with 40 designers, that got me 2 shows, you know, something like this, 1 show. But the reality is, like, if they don't answer, they're busy. You know, like, it's not about you, it's not personal. If they say no, it's not about you, it's not personal. And I did that for a few years. I assisted for a few years. And then when I said, you know, maybe I think, you know, assisting is tricky because you are investing in a different person, like in someone else's name, right? So I, at one point I was like, okay, my contributions, I think I'd like to invest in myself in these contributions at this point. So I took that ruling and that rule of thumb, and I said, okay, I wrote to all these designers, let me research every regional theater in the country, every commercial producer in the country, every not-for-profit producer, and every director that I've ever, you know, felt like I wanted to work with. Let me research them. I literally have a huge database list on my desktop that I still look at. I don't really use, but it's there. And every 6 months for like 6 years, I would write to that list just to say, hey, you know, still here, hope you're well. You know, I've been watching your work and this, that, and the other. And I did that for years. And that paid off, again, marginally, but you form a crack and you just shove your way through. You know, you have to just crack. So that's sort of when I would say my beginning approach was about sort of connection and understanding their work and not being transactional and really investing in people versus what I think they could do for me, because that's not, you know, the thing.
Yeah, great. Twee, how about you? What was your start?
Well, my first job in New York was this apprenticeship at a dance company. It was horrible, but I got what I needed to get out of it. And to echo part of what Zach has already said, a big thing for me was I literally sent my resume out to every theater in New York, despite being told not to do that because nobody was going to hire me with no experience. And for the most part, it was true. Like, I didn't get any responses, but the timing of it was also good because COVID happened and pretty much everyone was out of work for a long time except sound people. And so every theater was like, oh yeah, like you sent us your resume like 8 months before this happened. Are you available to do a podcast for us? And I have a lot of peers who are afraid to just like cold email people because they think it's weird, but like you literally have to go knock on doors that are not available to you. And even now that I have a resume, I still send out my resume and get responses from theaters, and they're like, hey, we've already staffed our season, but we would love to like Zoom chat with you to get to know you for next year's season. So yeah, I echo all of that of like just sending your resume out to people.
I just say, just tweet, I just want to lift up what you just said in the way of, if all of us received an email from a young person who was like, I respect you, I want to know you, I want to speak with you, none of us are going to be like, you're horrible, don't talk to us, how dare you write us, right? So it's similar. It's anyone who has, it's like, it's all internal. It's like, you know, just let that voice go and like do what you're going to do. You know, it's all good. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both.
Hi, yes. I think that for me, however, it's a much different story from everybody else, only because the immigrant experience in America is very different. The immigrant experience for me, I know that the stress that we have in order to, after undergrad at least, after undergraduate degree, and you have only a few months before you have to apply for a visa, right? To which point you take whatever you can get, not realizing you're being abused by the system. And to be honest, that's how I got through it. I was abused. I took every single job, the job that took 5 weeks but pays you only $300, all the above, just to get a credit on my resume. Am I trying to recover from it? I would say that I'm one of those folks who did say, thank you, COVID, for shutting down all those places, because you were using us and abusing us, and karma is real. So I'm grateful for the experience I've had with them, but I'm hopeful that this renaissance would change the way we all do things in theater. But yes, my start was literally doing every single thing I can without sleep so that I can just get a visa. It's horrible, but I'm here, so that's all good.
And you've worked with Wilson before, so how did that partnership come about?
Started in technically 2015, but 2013 was when we met at Williamstown Theater Festival. And I was an intern, my second year interning at Williamstown in the Scenic Design Studios, where Wilson was doing his show, Great Wilderness. Awesome set, by the way, you should check it out. So we met there and we talked for literally, I recall talking to Wilson for about 3 sentences. And then it wasn't until I graduate, I decided to just hit him up and ask if he would take a meeting. And he did. Out of all of the other designers who did not respond back from Williamstown, he did. So I was lucky to have met him 6 years ago and started working with him 6 years ago.
And Wilson is a designer who's fairly high profile. Do you get a lot of people reaching out to you, or is it rare?
I mean, I don't know what's a whole lot. I do get, you know, people who reach out, and I try to respond to all of them. It's, yeah, I try. I'm pretty good at responding to emails.
All right.
You know, I want to respond earlier to what someone said about like how you find work and like writing emails to all sorts of people. You know, in my experience, I didn't really get much work from people above me. Like I didn't really get design work from assisting. I got design work from like my own community, like people my own age and people that I was kind of coming up with. That's kind of where I got my design work. You know, like I feel like my assistant life and my design life were kind of 2 different circles that in both of those circles made me better. Assisting made me a better designer, and designing made me, got me more design work. So they kind of go hand in hand, but they were very different circles.
Can I respond to what Wilson said? Because that's a great point. A costume designer I love, recently, we had a chat recently, and she told me something along the lines of not to expect my tribe to be other sound designers. The people who are going to put my name up for jobs as a sound designer is probably going to be the scenic designer and the costume designer. And that has happened to me a lot the past year, where a director emailed me because the set designer put my name up because they hadn't hired a sound designer yet. So I just really wanted to echo what Wilson said about like a recommendation can take many different forms, and not just hoping that like the artistic director of a theater is going to like you enough to put you on a show. So yeah.
So who do you think other designers are the most important relationships? Like when we were talking to the directors, they were saying that the director-playwright relationship is the most important there. Who do you think is the most important to foster relationships with as a designer?
I think everyone. I think we get jobs from other designers, we get jobs from directors, choreographers, general managers, producers, production managers, right? I mean,
you got to be across the board. You know, everyone gets, in my world, everyone gets treated equally. Everyone. I mean, it doesn't matter what they do at that theater. So, because you never know where that recommendation is going to come. It could come from somebody's husband or boyfriend or girlfriend that was there, and they heard it from someone else and went on and was at another place. And next thing you know, it's like, how did that connection happen? Well, you connect the dots. But you're right, Zach's right, everyone.
You know what you learn is that the dramaturgs eventually become artistic directors.
Interesting.
Be friends with everyone. You know, just like, why not be friends with everyone in the room?
it's also why I'm always like so so like appalled when I hear like these stories of interns being mistreated by like guest artists or something like this. It's like, first of all, we've all been there, so why would you do that to someone else? Second of all, you don't, these people, you know, you start somewhere, you know, and this is a career investment. This is a lifetime investment. So there's no reason to, you know, like make anyone feel small so you feel big, because you fast forward 25 years, they're going to be big and they will definitely remember that and make you feel really small.
Twee, so coming up on Chicken and Biscuits, your first Broadway show, what choices or opportunities or relationships brought you to that place?
Okay, there's a friendly, appropriate answer to that question, and then there's a like really honest answer to that question. The friendly answer is this director. I've done like almost all of his radio plays during the pandemic. Awful low budget radio plays, and so he finally got a show that went to Broadway, and he was like, "I want Twee to do my show," because I spent the past year talking to him. The honest answer to that is while all of that is true, he also had to fight to make space to be able to hire me. He really had to convince other people in charge that he does not want to hire a white person sound designer. He does not want to hire a BIPOC man. He specifically wants a Black woman to be his sound designer on the production. And it was quite a fight. And it still is quite a fight with my name already on the show. And I think it's important to be transparent about things like that, about having a good relationship with the director, but also once you get the job, the fight is not over. And I will end my statement with that.
Thank you for giving us both answers.
I'll say it's not important how you get in the room. What's important is what you do once you're in the room. It's so hard to get through that door, you know, but once you get that chance, now, you know, it's just about proving to the world what you can do.
So for all of you, what's the biggest roadblock that you've experienced and how did you overcome it?
I think for me, and I say starting out, I'm still starting out, to be honest with you. I have maybe 3 years of design experience. But in year one and year two, it was really money, and not even just getting paid enough for my shows, but like having resources to actually do a good job on the show, like having money to pay for a software license, having a MacBook, specifically as a sound designer, is so important. Um, just being poor in general is hard when you want to be a designer, and I wish people talked more about that specifically from a design aspect, because I think we always hear about how hard it is being a creative out of the mouth of a playwright, a director, a dancer, et cetera, and never from the people like behind the scenes. Um, so it took quite a few people who loved me to help me get my resume to where it is in terms of financial support. So yeah.
Can I just lift up what you just said, Twee, about the concept of behind the scenes? I think that's really important. I've always thought this, but I think that's especially now, talking about like visibility and sort of being able to see yourself in a career, etc. I think part of the problem is that we remain behind the scenes. We give such a contribution that the audience or whoever it is does not even, like, they're trained to not understand that every beat is curated for the experience of what they're doing. And they're trained to like pretend, like erase us and just stare at the actors in the costumes, not understanding that like someone made the costumes, someone put them in the clothes, someone told them where to stand, someone is giving them the lines, someone has lit around them, built a floor and scenery with them in mind. And we're always, you know, we're always talking about, the actors always talking about playwrights and directors, and it's like the contribution of the makers, which is us, is endless. And I think it's just really important to continue, like you're saying, to keep that in the conversation, because how else are the generations behind us going to know it's even possible if they don't see us, if they don't hear us, if they don't hear what that is for us, you know, how to live like we're doing now, which Dennis really appreciated. But I just wanted to say that, as you said, it came up for me when you said that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other roadblocks that people have had that they've overcome? Or just moments of doubt that you got through?
Oh, there's always been doubt. Sometimes I felt like, okay, they're going to realize I'm not I'm not who I think I am, you know. But you have to really go past it in your head. You have to understand that you were hired for a job, get the job done, and then go out and look back at, you know, in retrospect, sometimes when I look back at jobs that I've done, I'm like, God, I could have done so much better if I would have done this. Or, oh, I can't believe I did not think about this or this or this. It's always that retrospect that holds me back, but then it fuels me to move forward. There's like, oh, remember like 5 years ago when you did this job and you forgot completely about this character's, you know, this mood or whatever. Then you take those times that you feel personally that you didn't give it everything you could have, and then you go above and beyond it, and you just keep pushing forward. And the one thing that I know that held me back is I can't listen to other people, not people that I work with. People that I work with is wonderful. The creative team, we've got that, but like friends, family, outside people, and they're like, what's that? Where are you going with that? And it's like, I 15 years ago, I had to stop talking about my job because other people's input was not necessarily what I wanted to hear. And so maybe that was a lot of times that stopped, because you think that they're going to be supportive and helping and pushing, and you're like, okay, that wasn't supportive what you said at all. So surround yourself with people who are supportive of what you're doing, even though it seems off to them. They don't have to like it, but they have to support it. That's 100% for sure.
Yeah.
I think for me, I love that you were talking about the like imposter syndrome, because I like also, you know, that's, I think all of us have that, but I think I had to learn a lot about like really doing a lot of inside work. It's like learning about managing my own expectations, understanding I do not have control over anything but myself, you know, all these things. And also when things go left, which especially working in the commercial space, like they go left a lot because management is tricky in that space. It's just different. In those moments, I think in the past, I would take that as a sign for, okay, I guess I have to put this whole show on my back and walk it up the hill, because everyone around me is not really, it's not happening, right? And it's like, who's going to make it happen? We are the makers, the people behind the scenes who no one really knows is even happening, but we're going to take that responsibility on because we have passion. And just, you know, but I think that depleted me in a way that long-term and short-term, like, it was not helpful to me or anyone around me. So, you know, sort of that negotiation and that relationship with yourself is something I work on every day. And like, it's important. And I think that's something I've been very blessed to have the time of COVID to really reinforce. And that's something I hope to never, ever lose again, moving forward. That's me.
You know, this conversation is actually bringing up some thoughts that I've had. You know, I feel like most of my career I've worked in like nonprofit regional theater, you know, nonprofit off-Broadway companies. And the few times that I've done commercial theater, I remember those first few times, you know, it's just a different world. It's more cutthroat. You have to like, it's less of a family and more of a like, get what you need. You gotta like scrape for anything that you need. And I remember like on my first Broadway show, I never felt comfortable, or I never felt like I belonged there. I never felt like I was good enough for it. And like, it took years later for me to realize that, like, that's so not true. We were actually all feeling the same way, but none of us were talking about it. And it wasn't really until like I did Passover, which is now my second Broadway show, that I realized, you know what, I need to go into this project with the same kind of confidence and the same kind of protection that I feel like when I do a nonprofit show, when I'm doing shows with like friends. And actually, I that was with friends, you know, that was like a show that Passover, that was our fourth time doing that production. So like we had kind of become a little bit of a family. So it was great taking that family energy and putting it into like a commercial production. And I remember every step of the way, like, you know, there were times when some of us were like, I don't know, like, it's navigating commercial theater can be so stressful. And like, I was able to be the one who could sometimes say like, you know, like, this is, you know, like, to be the one who can like nurture or comfort or say like, you know what, no, this is where we belong, we're here for a reason, to like, and to remind myself that as well. So I think for sure, as designers, we go through so many stages of like not feeling good enough, of not having the confidence, but it's for real. And it takes like, I've been in the business for like 20 years. I'm still battling all of those feelings. And it's commercial theater. It will break you down. Twee, it will break you down. Because I know you're about to get into it. So that's all I have to say.
Are there specifics, Wilson, that you think that can be different in commercial theater to make it feel like a more supported experience for designers?
You know, do you have? Broadway theater is like no other theater. You know, the union rules, working with Local 1, working with just all the different unions and the room just becomes much bigger, and it is a commercial enterprise. You know, like the ultimate goal is to make your money back or to make a profit. You know, so like figuring out how to put up a show, how to create arts within those, when because no one else is looking at the art. So sometimes it feels like no one else is looking at the art except for you and the director maybe. So and you realize, oh, that's actually my job. The producer's job is to take care of the money. I'm the one who's supposed to be looking after the art. And that's, you know, in nonprofit theater, like sometimes we're all thinking that, but in commercial theater, no, that's actually your job, and you're the only person who has that job sometimes. So I don't know, what were we talking about?
Just wondering if you had anything that you would like to see changed in the way
how to make Broadway better. I you know, like, I wish someone had like maybe another designer had sat me down and be like, okay, so you're about to do a Broadway show. You need to know all of this stuff like you know, on your first day in the theater, walk directly to the head carpenter and head prop person and introduce yourself. You know, like, those are the people who are gonna like the gatekeepers of if your show is gonna happen or not. So, you know, like, and thankfully I do have those friends and I rely on them a lot. But like, if I didn't have those friends, if I didn't have that network, I don't know where I don't know what would happen to me. So yeah, hand-holding is, you know, like, we all need some hand-holding. I highly recommend more hand-holding.
I want to say also, it's funny, because we talk about like commercial, like we center Broadway, we talk about commercial Broadway, right? And that, interesting, Broadway, as high the stakes are, the support in its union nature, in its monetary nature, sometimes, you know, like the understanding of what goes in to make a show like that in commercial Broadway is one thing. For me, I end up finding myself, for reasons, you know, it's a different podcast, but you know, I exist in like an off-Broadway commercial space. Talk about Wild Wild West, because those people are just like sort of random people who have an idea about like a really problematic play or musical. They find money somehow, and they get a theater, and they're like, we're going to insert like probably 40 shows that I've done, and they're all problematic and psychotic and completely traumatizing to all of us working on them. And the reasoning is a few reasons, I think. So I just want to say, like, commercial Broadway, hard. Commercial off-Broadway, like psychiatric ward, Wild Wild West, like crazy. Because there's no, you know, it's like the blind leading the blind. It's like a whole thing. Except for the makers, which is interesting. The makers tend to like know their stuff because we do this every day of our lives. The leadership does not, and that's the trick. So I to answer your original prompt, I had a thought of like, and I've been saying this lately louder and louder actually on these few projects I'm working on, but I would love to see producer be a support role versus a leadership role. I think in my experience, which again exists in a significantly commercial Wild Wild West space, if you will, many problems stem from decisions being made by people who don't know enough about what that means and how that impacts the artists and the makers and ultimately the show, and then ultimately their bottom line, that they don't have enough foresight to even understand what they're doing because they have the least experience in the room but the most power. It's very confusing, and it's troubling. So for me, I would love to see producers not be a leadership role, but to be a support role.
Let me ask you guys a question. Have you ever had this happen to you? Have you ever had a producer come and whisper something in your ear about the show? Yeah. And you're sitting there like, I mean, you literally have to just take a big gulp in and say, thank you so kindly for bringing it to my attention. Let me see what I can do. And you turn around, you're like, oh my gosh, did crazy just join the circus? And I'm here to witness it. And now I'm torn between, and then, I mean, do you keep it to yourself? Do you try to accommodate them? I've had that happen several times. It's a hard situation to be in because you know that producer has no idea what a Spencer jacket is. No idea, none whatsoever. And they're like, well, I don't know about that. And I'm like, really? You want to go against 30 years of training to tell me that that's not what it is? You're right, Zach and Wilson. It is such a different playing field on both games. And the word that you brought up, Wilson, gatekeeper, I can't tell you how many gatekeepers. And it seems like when you get into that realm, there's so many that want to be gatekeepers. And that should have no place in what we're doing. Everyone should be working as one team to make the show productive and not stop it along the way. But that getting a producer to whisper something in your ear that they didn't like about what was happening with your costumes up on stage, it's like, oh heavens, that's a biggie. It's hard.
We should do a whole, I'll invite you all back to do a panel between producers and designers about talking about the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, and I've worked with so many amazing producers, you know, they do it, they produce, and then they step back.
Yeah. That's
what they do. That's your job. But then you get the ones that's like, well, I can produce and I can do lighting and costumes and I'm going to direct on how they're going to go on stage. Okay.
Run away as fast as you can.
Oh, out the door. Just, that's a hard one. That's a really tough situation to be in.
So many of you also in your introductions talked about other things that you're doing that aren't theater, but are related to your craft, whether it's teaching or film or being a stylist, Shirlee. For people who are just coming out of school and they're thinking about being a theatrical designer, do you suggest that they look into these other outlets now, or focus just on this and add that later? What are your thoughts or experience about that from your perspective?
I feel like you don't turn any stone away if it's going to help you learn your craft more. Specifically styling for a photo shoot, styling for red carpet, styling for a party. You never know what you're going to go and what you're going to be up against. Not only styling, but there's so many outlets in my field. And I'm sure that, you know, everyone here knows that. And just like Zach said, not only does he light for Broadway, but professional corporate. There's so many times that I get called in to do, I made costumes for a man who makes statues, bronze statues. He had to have the costume. So sometimes the odd jobs that come your way are a really good job that it pays more and it's less work. It's like, okay, this is a win in my situation. But I mean, not as, you're still researching, but you're not doing 80 some costumes. You're only doing one. But yeah, absolutely take those jobs that are outside that realm, because sometimes outside that realm is going to be more work.
I would take that even further too, being that for me, I discovered something while I was doing it as a hobby. I was just so stressed out and I discovered baking, right? And that turned into a lot of, there was a lot of overlap that I didn't realize I had from doing set design, enough that I also do stop motion videos of food, right? Which to me, and also get commissioned for it as a designer. Yeah, so sometimes just try something that is not related to this at all, because you need an escape. You need an escape. Sure, you can be a set designer, but also production designer and an art director. You're still in the same world, right? What is it do you do that gives you that mental health break that you do not have to think about theater? Eventually, I'm pretty sure in your mind, it's like, oh, I'm working on a new project. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm glad I'm not working with XYZ, but then again, you're still in that mindset. What is it that you can do coming out of this that gives you joy and brings you that joy without destroying the one you have, right? We all love doing this. We all are still here because we love doing this. Keep yourself protected enough that it will still be a continuation and you will still enjoy it for the rest of your life. And that to me was a, let's stop doing the theater part for 1 second and let me do something else completely different. That's
Great
all.
advice. Thank you.
Can I add to that that my therapist constantly says to me that our industry is extremely sick because we all introduce ourselves as like, hi, I'm Zach Blane, a lighting designer. Not Zach Blane like a human, like Pisces, this, that, like our identity is in our work, which is like I've learned in this time also, like that's very specific to our industry. It's not like everyone who's an attorney is like, I'm blah, 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 an attorney. They're like, I'm blah, blah, blah. I have 2.5 kids. I have this, you know, I'm sure some cis white person is saying this, but I'm saying like, you know, like it's interesting. She kept pushing me on this. She's like, okay, like, because the sentence is always like, I'm blah, 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 and this is what I do, because obviously everyone around me knows exactly what I do, because all we do is talk to each other in our own industry and we have no identity outside of it. So a lot of like, it's depletion, you know, it's like we're going. Actually, so for me, I would say also to answer that prompt is like, what I try and do is like, I will go for a walk down the Hudson. I will schedule time to watch the sunset. Like you have to, because otherwise we're just constantly depleting. And like, we need to be able to to fill yourself of things that keep you, like what Ryu just said, is like human and balanced and present. And that is not like, how much work can I get in this short amount of time? And that's something I'm also like learning, but I've learned in this time too, is like, actually, we are human and I'm not Zach Blane lighting designer. You know, like, it's like, we're human. And that's, we need to lead and center humanity. And I think that will help a lot of things actually, but that's what I'm working on anyway.
Awesome. Thank you for passing along your therapist's wisdom. I think that's something I need to hear for sure as well. Any other thoughts on this in terms of either, so we're sort of revolving around two topics now. One, either being just career-wise, if there are other outlets that have supported your work, but still in the same vein, or any other just ways that you found to stay human throughout the crazy world of theater.
I know I'm talking a lot, but I was going to say, I actually didn't answer the beginning of your sentence, which, so for 10 years, I think I said this before, I lit cruise ships, which to me is not theater. It's a totally different thing. And actually the type of people that work there are totally different in the most amazing way, because they're not this sort of like New York, like crabs in a barrel, like sort of like climbing thing. It's like, we're just here having fun and we're like making this show, and that's amazing. But I would definitely categorize those 10 years of cruise ships, which a lot of people would probably say is like bougie. I would definitely categorize that as my day job. I did not like it. I did not want to do it. It's the only thing I could do that I could actually afford to pay my rent, which like is hard for people to hear, I think, a lot, like for when I say that, but it's like, that is my truth. Whether that is your truth is irrelevant, but like my truth is I did not like it. I only did it to subsidize my theater addiction. You know, I would have much rather have, like, it's fun, like actually Wilson and I have talked about this, is like, I would have loved to be embraced by the regional, you know, sort of circuit and like do that, you know, but that's not, I ended up doing this commercial thing because of different reasons. So you know, roads are different for everyone, but I would say, yeah, I mean, find a day job that is working on your craft, but actually can allow you to live and eat.
And if anyone is really interested in designing for cruise ships, how did that job come about?
You know, it's interesting. That actually came about, okay, it's a long story. It's a short story. A friend of mine I grew up with, we were like actors together. She knew a friend who was a dancer on a cruise ship, and they needed like a last minute lighting designer. And this was like, this is probably the first time I ever left the country. Point is, that day I just said yes, and I was like, okay. And then the next day I was on a plane to Barbados. And I got on a plane to Barbados, and I did this ship that I sort of figured out as I went along, as we're talking about. And then my tenacity like followed up, and my tenacity was like, what can I do next? Like, is there a project next that I can do? You know, like what else? And then a different cruise line knew that I was doing that, and they asked me, and I sort of like weighed that, and I ended up transitioning to a different line. And I just kept basically saying yes and like then follow up and like really just be present. And when you're there, be kind and just do the best you can with what you have. And the older I get, the more that sentence makes more sense to me. With what you have, like it cannot be your perfection, but it can be perfect for what you have. So I think more and more, you just have to stay present and just do the thing that you're hired to do, and then book the next thing before you leave.
Well, we're nearing the end of our time, so I wanted to give space if anyone has any final parting words of advice for these up and coming designers who are embarking on a long journey.
Follow your gut. Your gut is going to help you. Your head's going to say one thing, your heart's going to say something else, but your gut is really going to lead you to where you need to be. And just stay in the game. Just try not to give up. That's the hardest part. I know so many good ones that come here and they just give up, because it is hard. It is not easy. You are fighting daily. Just like everyone here has said, it's a challenge, but just stay in the game.
Thanks, Shirlee.
Welcome.
I would say to constantly practice, even when you have stretches of time where you're not working. I'm still buying books and reading books. I'm still teaching myself things about QLab. I'm still teaching myself things about drafting. Like the learning literally never stops, which is hard about the job, that there's always something new to master. But spending time on your own learning things is going to help you when you finally get into a show that's going to stretch your skill level. so that you can be able to effectively do your job as a designer.
Thank you, Twee.
Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to say no and know your worth.
Yes. That brings us back to where we started with Shirlee.
I think my biggest advice is to find your community. Find the people who you love and who love you back, and, you know, grow up, you know, like kind of upward and onward with your community.
All right, thanks, Wilson. Zach?
I think I'd be remiss to not like name that obviously we are in uncharted territory and everyone should be gentle with themselves and with everyone around you. That, you know, all the things we've talked about for the past hour, all of that exists in a space that doesn't really exist currently or for however long, unclear. And that's fine because like Wilson just said, like we're in it together and that's awesome. But also like, you know, be present, and like the present is not what it was 2 years ago, and that's fine. You know, so just stay present and be gentle and just, you know, move how you can with what you have. And for me, a big thing is it's much easier to connect the dots backwards. And I say that meaning expectations are a killer, and trying to push, you know, trying to mold things into how you see it should be going. It's never going to be that way. And that's like divine in its own way. You'll only really see why the things have happened and like how they've happened backwards. What the lessons were and are backwards. I don't think it's possible to see it forward. So just know that when it's happening, like you're learning, you're growing, and you're meeting people and you're on the road. We're all on the road, and connect the dots backwards.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, everybody. This was a really valuable discussion. Audience, thank you for tuning in. If you want more, make sure you hit subscribe to keep up to date on our content. And check out all these great designers. Twee's got something coming up right now. Wilson's got something on Broadway as we speak. So look them all up, check them out, and hope to see you in the theater in real life very soon. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.